Everybody, welcome to Spearhead Transmission. It is April 17, 2017. It's time to break those chains and water that tree. Tonight with me, I have a very special guest. Once again, Nick's not in the studio. This is kind of one of those Spearhead Transmission Vault sessions. Tonight I have a very special guest. His name is Robert M. Stanley. He's formerly a corporate journalist for Honda Research and Development. Robert is currently employed as a corporate editor for an international social compliance service. He is the author of two groundbreaking books, Close Encounters on Capitol Hill and Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C. He's also the webmaster of UNICUSmagazine.com, and he is the host of the UNICUS Radio Hour. He has served as a correspondent for America's Morning News and America's Radio Network. During his passionate pursuit of modern and ancient mysteries, Robert has traveled to 58 countries in 57 years. Robert's quest for unique ideas and information has led him to research and write about many controversial topics. His ongoing investigations have been featured on television, radio, print, and the internet. So, Robert, I know you're there. We just spoke just a little bit on the introduction. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
You're 10,000 miles away from me right now, but your Skype looks amazing. You're in Hong Kong. It's morning. It's 9 p.m. for me tonight, but it's 10 a.m. or a little after 10 a.m. there. So, good morning to you.
Thank you.
So, Robert, if you could, because our listeners are still kind of really new to this idea, and I'm still really new to it, but just kind of give us a little bit of history about who you are, and how you came about this knowledge. You had a number of paranormal experiences, but just a little bit of history on who you are, if you would.
Okay. I was born and raised in Malibu, California. Okay. So I am a native to Los Angeles. It's a very interesting place to grow up. However, I have, as you said earlier, I've traveled a lot outside the country, and I guess that had enough, impact on shaping me. I didn't go to school as much as my peers, so I'm self-taught in a lot of regards. And I think that's actually helped me when it comes to being an independent researcher and reporter, because I don't have a rigid belief system.
Right.
And in fact, I want to preface what we're going to discuss here, especially not just me, but everybody who's discussing these matters in this field of paranormal, metaphysical, whatever you want to call it, exopolitical. Most of what we talk about is speculation at this point. Right. Just want to be really clear with people here, because a lot of times I don't always preface it with allegedly or reportedly. If I said that all the time, it would get a little bit weird. But I just want people to understand that we are not given access. I mean, humanity here in this world is not being given access to what I would consider valid archives and artifacts that would help put things into the proper context. And more importantly, we are not being allowed to have a direct dialogue with our spacefaring family. So, it's really not about me. I appreciate you asking about who I am, but I'm just another person on this planet that was thrown into the deep end of the paranormal pool. And it was sink or swim. Specifically, it started in 1985, September 21st, for me. That's when things really went nuts for me, okay? And it took me over 30 years to actually figure out what had happened and why. Not just to me, because I'm not here by myself, obviously. In the process, I learned what was going on for all of humanity, and why so much of our ancient history has been denied us.
Right. Okay. So for those people that don't know what we're talking about right now, we're talking about ancient gods, Anunnaki, right? Or however, whatever we want to call them, we don't know. But and the popular school of thought at this point in time is that there are these ancient gods that came from Nibiru. They flew. There's a whole bunch of cataclysmic collisions or whatever happened, and they migrated here for gold. The resources were running low, so they came here, and they've created us. And the popular dialogue is that Enlil is the bad guy, Enki's the good guy, and that's what's going on. But from what I've heard from you is that it's the opposite of that. And I guess the first thing is that the idea of these ancient gods is so far removed from the mainstream, right? This is that most people look at this subject matter as kind of, it's ludicrous, right? I mean, if you go back, if you've ever seen that movie, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but They Live with Roddy. Of course. Right, okay. So everybody looked at him like he was insane. Now, even his best friend, the guy that he worked with, right? The fight to try to get him to put on the glasses, right? That fight was unreal. It took him, almost to the death. And he still didn't give up, and finally got him to look and see. It's kind of the same thing that's going on in humanity. Now that might be the fight is pretty. It's pretty brutal when it comes down to it, right? I mean, as far as
it depends. Look, it depends on how you approach it.
Okay.
I realize that because we're dealing with something that's extremely sensitive, it's not. You can't just force it on people. Mm-hmm. All I can do is offer it up, and if they respond or resonate with it, fine. If they don't, it's their choice. Honestly, it's as I said, it's not about me. I think, however, people increasingly, more and more people are responding to this and realizing that we've been lied to on many levels, mm-hmm. and we're part of a larger conflict, and have been for a very, very long time. So, and people not only sense that something's wrong, they sense that that what we've been told up to this point doesn't make any sense. It's illogical. It's just, for most people, it's just a gut feeling that something is really wrong, and nobody seems to be addressing it correctly. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of opinion, there's a lot of speculation, mm-hmm. and most everybody out there in this field is speaking in declarative terms as though it was absolute fact. Okay?
Yeah.
But it isn't. Unfortunately, right. It just isn't. Look, I'll give you an example. You want to talk mainstream when most people are familiar with the Bible, mm-hmm. especially what most people read is the King James Version. Okay? That was written by a team of people under the supervision of Sir Francis Bacon. Okay. He was a Rosicrucian. He was also known as William Shakespeare.
Oh, well, yeah, okay.
Not exactly a fundamentalist Christian.
No.
And a lot of what is in that book is coded. It's a metaphysical manuscript. Only the initiates would know or understand a lot of the code that is embedded in there. So, for example, everybody's familiar with the Garden of Eden, right?
Right.
It's the beginning of by the way, the Bible just means book, and yet it's a compilation of books. So it's kind of I think they did a horrible job. Honestly, if I was editing the whole thing, I would do it differently. But most people have read Genesis, and they are familiar with the Garden of Eden. And, of course, the antagonist there is Lucifer.
Right.
And I use that word instead of Satan for a reason. That's a title. It means light bearer. Now, you probably would think that he is at least the way it's depicted in the Bible, King James Version, it says snake, right?
Right.
Okay, the original Hebrew it can mean snake, but it also means shining.
Oh, wow.
To shine. And that is because he does radiate light.
Okay.
That's what he looks like. For anybody who's been close to him, they know. And it doesn't happen all the time, but he does have that ability. Mm-hmm. Whether it's organic or technology, I don't know. I kind of think it's organic.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question later on. I had a question about that, and it had to do with your. Sure. I don't want to get too far off on this, but it had to do with your Technoside article. But The idea that these ancient aliens or these gods or these ancient gods, is it mysticism or is it just technology that's beyond our years? You know what I mean?
It's both. So it's both. Arthur C. Clarke had said this, and I think it's an accurate statement, that advanced technology to a primitive people would appear to be magic. Mm-hmm. And that was the problem. A lot of what happened here was the original life that was put here, those people were not stupid, but they didn't have technology. And they weren't a warrior race. So when Enki showed up here and took over by force and started genetically manipulating everything to serve his agenda, it changed things dramatically. People have been suffering here for far too long, in my opinion. And I know it's coming to an end. Thank goodness.
It feels like
but it is. It just is, because it's illegitimate. His empire, his universe is synthetic. It's illegitimate. It's a mess, honestly. But I should also preface what I'm saying here about him as though he's our arch-villain. We are all related. He is part of a royal family. But he is ill. He's mentally insane. And I don't say that lightly. Mm-hmm. And I want people to understand, I do not hate him. I don't fear him. But I understand him. And that's the only reason I'm talking about this. And it's important because his illness has infected and affected all of us for a very long time, in at least the way we measure time here on this planet.
So, okay. All right, so let's do this, because it's a lot of information to digest, and because right now we're shocking all the people that believe that Enlil is the bad guy and Enki's the good guy. But let's. So I know you talked a little bit about this, your encounter with Enki in Malibu, and if you could maybe give us a little bit of rundown on that, like. Because,
I'll summarize it for you. But here, before we go into that, what you just said, why is it that people believe Enlil is the evil one?
Yeah.
It's directly because of the fiction that Zecharia Sitchin published. And he was being helped by the Vatican and the Rothschild family. I mean, most people don't understand this. But Zecharia Sitchin was not a linguist. He graduated from the London School of Economics. He was a classmate of George Soros. Both of those men, in my opinion, ended up doing the bidding of the Rothschild family, which is an extension of the Luciferian empire. And when I say Luciferian, I'm speaking of Enki. He has many different names. He's known as Lucifer, Enki, Ea, Ptah, Loki, etc. Okay, so, all right. Now, I didn't know any of this when I first encountered him. And by the way, it wasn't so much as an encounter as it was a confrontation. I didn't realize that at the time. But, okay, so it was September 21st, 1985. That was an equinox. Which is, equinoxes and solstices are typically a time of initiation or other types of sacred rituals that typically revolve around these entities. And for whatever reason, I mean, we won't go into it, but that particular day I was working as a security guard on the beach in Malibu. And in brief, I saved a young boy's life. He was bleeding to death. And in the process, I saw what looked like paranormal parasites floating over the event. I only saw it briefly. I had no idea at the time that anybody knew that those things even existed. I thought I was imagining it because of all the trauma, the shock, the blood going on. And in any case... after the event, after the paramedics showed up and took the boy off to the hospital, I felt like I was being attacked. I didn't immediately think it was those parasites that I saw. All I knew was that something was terribly wrong. And at first I thought it was just, again, the trauma was like upsetting my stomach. You know how some people actually faint from the sight of blood? Yeah. I don't. But I mean, it'll certainly turn your stomach when you see somebody bleeding to death, right? I mean,
sure, and the adrenaline must have been really high as well.
Adrenaline, yes, of course. But that you would think after an hour or so that would go away. It wasn't. It was actually getting worse, and I could feel it in my solar plexus, which is, some people call it the pit of your stomach.
Right.
It's also known as the second brain, by the way, for people who've never heard this before. Okay, the solar plexus is considered our second brain. Look it up if you don't understand or believe me. Okay. But anyway, I was feeling something was terribly wrong, and I was running on instinct at that point. I didn't know how to stop it, but I felt like my life force was literally being sucked right out of me through my stomach. So I ended up going up on top of a mountain that night, which is really out of character for me. I mean, yeah, I like to hike, but I don't typically just spontaneously go and, sit on a mountaintop seeking answers to, I mean, really, I didn't know what else to do. So I ended up going up on top of this mountain around sunset, and I was watching the sun set as the moon was rising. It was a really profound night, honestly. It was, I mean, even if I hadn't been traumatized, I think just being there in those energies of both, the moon and the sun equally, like shining on me, and it was just a powerful experience just to be there in that wilderness alone. So anyway, I was meditating, praying, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm not religious, but I felt I needed help. Yeah. So as I was sitting there meditating, trying to figure out what I should do or could do to help myself, I was employing a technique from yoga called Kriya. Okay. And so I was saying the word Om in such a manner that I was sitting cross-legged on the ground, and at some point I was doing this for a while, and I could actually feel the energy moving up through me, especially the top of my head was starting to resonate, and I could actually hear the overtones like octaves just stacking up. So I realized, you know what, I'm broadcasting now. I should into the I could actually see the Milky Way overhead at some point, right? So I'm just broadcasting out, and I thought, what should I say? I didn't want to just say help, help. I felt that what I'd experienced with the boy and his grandparents earlier that day at work on the beach was evil. There was just no other word for it, okay? You could say it's an accident, but at that point I kind of knew something else was going on. I mean, intuitively I felt it. And so I thought, well, the opposite of evil is love. So that's what I was thinking. That's all I was thinking. I kept thinking as I was projecting this energy through me into the cosmos. That was sort of like a message in a bottle. Yeah. And I had no expectation of what was going to happen, right? Or even if anybody was going to hear it or pick up on it. So I did that for as long as I could, and then I got really tired because, it was getting late, and I didn't want to leave at that point. I had ridden my motorcycle up there, and even though I wasn't prepared to spend the night, I just felt like I needed to stay there until I needed to figure it out. Okay, so I wasn't going anywhere, but I did feel at some point, and I'm guessing it was around midnight. I don't wear a watch. I hate watches and jewelry. I don't like that stuff on my body. But anyway, I laid down. I'm thinking it was around midnight because the moon was overhead, and as I laid down on this cement slab there, it was sort of remnants of a naval installation of a radar during the Cold War. But anyway, I laid on this, and my face was shaded from the moon. Mm-hmm. But as I laid down, moments later, I had so you know what that falling asleep feeling is, where you just kind of you feel like you're falling and you jerk yourself. Yeah, it was exactly like that, except I didn't fight it. I just let myself go, and I went just popped out of my body. And I guess it's really quite normal, but at the time it seemed very weird, because when that happened, I suddenly was in a dimension of white light, and that's all I could see, and that's all I could feel. You know, which actually at the time it felt pretty good. I felt I was safe there, at least momentarily, because the next thing I recall was I noticed some motion off in the distance. So naturally, that caught my attention, because again, my body is laying on a cement slab in a wilderness. There are wild animals up there. Right. I've seen them up close. Okay, so I know, including mountain lions. But I mean, I'm out of my body. I'm in this place, and I see motion. And then I realized, whoa, it's coming towards me. It's getting closer and closer. And then as it got close enough, I could see that it was actually the figure of a man that looked like Jesus because of the long hair, the beard, and the robe. Okay, but he was brighter. He was glowing brighter than the light that we were both in at that time. Naturally, I was shocked. And I got a little confused because I didn't know who this guy was. And I thought, I was just thinking out loud, sort of myself, like, whoa, who's that, you know? And he said to me, I'm the Father. And I didn't know what he was. I mean, yeah, I heard what he said, but I didn't make it Father of what, you know? I'm not stupid, okay? At that point, I was 25 years old, and my dad had been a minister and stuff when I was
going to ask you that question.
Yeah, I understand. He's trying to say, basically, if you were very religious, you'd say, "Whoa, he's God." Well, I didn't get that feeling from him. Okay. I mean, why not just say I'm God? You know, no, I'm the Father. Okay, whatever. The point was, it really confused me. Yeah. So I mean, it seemed more like it was more like a riddle. The way he said it, and his appearance, right? I'm trying to figure it out, and he started laughing at me after he said, I'm the Father, then he started laughing at me. Okay? And it wasn't – it was sinister. Okay? I'm sorry. It just like, you know, for anybody who's seen some of my earlier interviews, you're going to go, wait a minute, he's changing his story. Yeah, I was wrong. Okay? I didn't want to admit that I was being played. Okay? And I didn't even know. I at the time, I really didn't know. It's just embarrassing to think that you're calling for help, right? Help. I mean, you're projecting love. I'm assuming I really was assuming, and that's not a good thing, that he was there to help me. That's what I wanted to believe. This is out of pure naivety.
Well, I would think, though, like you said your dad was a minister, right? And let's think about this. It makes sense to me, but let's think about it this way: is that if the master of deceit, Lucifer, right? Yeah. This cat rolls up on you. He's gonna look the part, right? He wants to look the part, especially if that's your preconception already, right? Which I would venture to guess that most Americans would have that preconception as far as, you know. I mean. Yep. Right, and so he's gonna come and say, "Hey, I'm the Father," right? And but then laughing at you. I mean, that fits the bill, right?
Yeah, it does. But I didn't know that at the time. Again, sure, I'm just trying to put this into context for people. I really didn't know. Okay, because the very next thing I know, when he started laughing at me, the very next thing I know, I sat bolt upright. I mean, and I didn't think I had fallen asleep. It felt like I was having just this weird out of body kind of visionary thing momentarily. I mean, not even a minute or two had passed in my understanding. But when I sat up and I looked around, I saw now that the moon was no longer overhead. It was setting on the horizon, which totally freaked me out because that meant hours had gone by. Right? Yeah. And I had zero understanding of what had happened in that time frame because I was completely lucid when I was having that experience, okay? Now, I understand, too, that from a psychological perspective, the way the mental health profession looks at this, I was having a hypnagogic hallucination.
Okay.
That is the terminology that they would use.
Okay.
Okay. I studied psychology, by the way. I got a B in that class. I think it's a total load of crap, but you know, it's a relatively new science, and in fact, people treat it like religion because it's based on faith. Most of that stuff is not factual at all.
Right.
Okay, it's opinion based.
Right.
And they present it as, again, this is important to just look. I'm not here to judge people. I'm just I'm trying to put this in a proper context so we can have some clarity in this conversation. Okay. Because again, it's not about me. It's about humanity. Here is what ultimately we're getting to, because this character has done a lot of damage to humanity over a period of time. Okay, so anyway, when I woke up or sat up, and I just instinctively knew there's no way I could have been asleep for that long. I was laying on cement. I have a sleep disorder. I don't even sleep that well in a bed. Okay, I wake up repeatedly. So to have that many, at least 3-4 hours to come by, and I'm laying on cement, it didn't make any sense. And besides, like I said, I was so awake when I first, when he, and again, I know now, he was confronting me. Right. He wasn't responding to my call. He was actually concerned that I was screwing up his agenda. That's why he confronted me like that. And he did a good job at it. I mean, hey, and I'm not the only one that's been tricked by him.
Screwing up his agenda.
Well, I mean, the agenda was this. Okay, kind of jumping ahead here.
Yeah. What
I learned over a period of decades of research is that the parasites I saw that day are something that he created.
Okay.
Inadvertently, at some point.
And those are what you saw when saving the little boy's life there. You saw.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. Okay.
Right, but I'm not the only one that's seen them. Other people even photographed them, and that's in my first article, Meet the Archons. It's on my website. But in any case, the group of people in Egypt called the Gnostics, somehow they saw these things too, or at least some of their shaman, priests, whatever, they were aware of these parasitic entities as well as the Luciferian aspect. I mean, they don't exist independently. They're part of Enki's empire.
Okay.
And it's part of his illness is not only, okay, here's what happened. Allegedly, a friend of my dad, my real biological father, had an experience in the 1950s where he was encountering benevolent human extraterrestrials who told him that Lucifer had gone mad when he entered a forbidden zone, whatever that may be, somewhere in this galaxy or universe. When he went in there with his crew, at that time, they were builders of worlds. They were still divine beings, gods, angelic beings, I guess is what Christians call them. But in any case, when they went in there, they were normal, healthy, divine. But something about that forbidden zone was so traumatic that they experienced dissociative disorder, where their soul fragmented into multiples, and so they were not only suffering from multiple personality disorder, they inadvertently created these parasitic thought forms. I know that sounds weird. How can you just create something with your thought? Well, it's there. I can explain it very briefly, but we know there are examples of this in Tibet. Tibetan monks, Buddhist monks, they claim that they can when they feel that they're being threatened, one of the ways they defend themselves is to create what they call a tulpa, T-U-L-P-A. You might want to look that up.
Okay.
It means that it's a thought form that actually manifests enough in a physical way that it can literally attack or defend, I should say, the monk that is being attacked.
Wow.
I know that sounds utterly fantastic, right? Why would I even say that? Okay, I'll tell you why. Is because everything is consciousness. But what is consciousness? It is a waveform. It's being broadcast by our soul, or souls, actually, sort of like a ripple in a pond when you throw a pebble.
Right.
We are constantly broadcasting, I should say our soul is constantly broadcasting waveforms into the,
it sounds, I mean, what you're saying, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me, and the reason that it does is that when you're talking about it broadcasting waveforms, right? Like,
right.
Waves.
Well, we know that's true. Yeah.
Right.
We know that happens. Okay. But here's the thing. Let me just complete this for you. So what we're taught, the current model is consciousness is just sort of like an accident. It happens. Right. It's not fundamental. It's not primary to creation. Mm-hmm. They think it's all random. That's what science tells us. Well, they're wrong, in my opinion, based on my studies of a new model of physics called digital physics. Mm-hmm. In summary, here's the deal. Consciousness is the highest waveform known in creation. In fact, it's where creation, that's where the whole thing is. It's all about conceiving. You have to have a concept. It starts with, like, look at this. Mm-hmm. If you want to build something, it starts with a thought. Right. You'd write it down on a blueprint, and then it proceeds from there until it's manifest, okay? It's actually true for everything. And here's what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. Consciousness is the highest frequency of waveform in existence. Okay. You step it down a bit, and that was what we call energy. Okay. You step it down a little bit more, and that would be considered matter. But it's all the same thing. Just like a drop of water can be a solid, a liquid, or a gas, depending on its right. Yeah. I got it. Yeah. All right, so it's pretty simple, okay? Mm-hmm. But we're not being taught this. Why? Because everything is backwards, because we're in Enki's empire here. He doesn't want his subjects, his slaves basically, to be too well informed about who they are, what they are, and where they are. Okay, so I know what I'm saying sounds unusual, but it's not impossible. All right, yeah, no. You know what? I think on other worlds, I really firmly believe this. I think on worlds that are still unaffected by this problem, this infection of consciousness, this is just fundamental. I mean, from the very beginning, those beings are all raised with this awareness, and what happens is that they act accordingly. So they train themselves to use their soul essence, their divine nature is to be highly creative, right? Totally empathic or telepathic, because we're all connected. Anyway, I think I'm wandering off the subject here.
No. I mean, I think you're explaining it. Well, okay, so yeah. Lucifer. This is kind of where we got down this path. Is that Lucifer lost his ability, right, as a creator, basically a creator of worlds, and he went crazy, right? Or that caused him to go crazy, maybe. Or we don't know. We don't know exactly. We're speculating here, but so it caught it. Now, the question that I have is this: is that so? Let's look at just as the analogy or whatever, or the best that we can explain it, however you want to look at it. So at that moment in the Garden of Eden, right? Yeah. When the Shining One or the snake or whatever we want to call him, right? At that point, so in the story goes is basically he's offering the gift of knowledge, right, of good and evil.
Yes.
Okay, so the gift of knowledge of good and evil at that point, and is he crazy at that point, or is that the metaphor of when he goes crazy?
Bravo. Okay. Excellent. See, now you're thinking correctly. Okay. In my opinion. Okay, that was an excellent question. Okay. Here's why. Mm-hmm. He was already mad. Okay. And when he says he's offering to knowledge of good and evil, it's because he is evil. Evil is an infection. Okay. I think most people don't understand this because it hasn't been properly diagnosed or presented as, with the correct terminology for evil or psychopathic behavior. It's an infection of or a distortion of one's consciousness, which is an expression of their soul. Okay, so the soul can be broken and fragmented, and when that happens, there's no integrity of that particular being. They lack integrity. All right, and there's also internal conflict there. So again, they no longer can create using consciousness. All they can do is manipulate what has already been created. So this is why we see on this world the so-called leaders or rulers of our world are typically psychopaths, which is the opposite of an empath. They lack empathy. Their connection to all the other intelligent life forms is broken.
Right. And so this evil being a infection, then it's because we're connected, then it is infectious. Right? Is that what
it's highly infectious.
Okay, so,
especially if you don't know that it exists. Yes, especially when a person is unaware that there even is. It's like you traveled to Africa and didn't know Ebola exists. The odds are, if you go to a certain village, you're going to get it. I mean, but however, if somebody told you, hey, you know what? If you go into that village, you're going to get Ebola. You're like, holy crap! Either you're not going to go there, or you're going to take precautions to protect yourself from it when you do, if you do.
So the next part of it then would be this: is that if everybody, all beings that are born into this world, or at some point, they'll be exposed to this infection. Or this, and is that, how do you safeguard yourself?
Sorry. The Muslims talk about this as, they call them the jinn, the parasites that I'm speaking of, and also the ones that generate it. This is all considered to be the jinn, according to, they're basically Semitic or people of that region, and they say everybody has at least one of these things assigned to them at birth. Okay, that was surprising when I found that out. And also that they have the ability to whisper into the souls of men. Okay, I'm quoting now. When I speak to that, I didn't make that up, all right? But it fits the narrative of what we're discussing here. Right. In other words, it's helping to, I just mentioned it to put it into context. This is not a judgment on anybody's religion or the culture. It's just trying to help. A lot of people, I hate to say, this is incomprehensible. What's going on? Our world seems to be getting worse, not better. But it's because they don't have the proper context. And that is done to us by design. We are kept ignorant of these facts. I call them that. I mean, obviously, look, I can't prove a lot of this stuff, but it does make sense, okay? And and here's the thing. I know people understand what I'm saying because I get a lot of email. It's feedback. I know people hear what I'm saying, and typically, and increasingly so, people are responding to it, saying that it makes sense to them, okay? So, again, however, if I get new information, or as I get new information, I'm willing to change my perspective on all of this.
Sure.
It's not like I'm invested. Well, but see, here's the thing: some people are very egotistical and completely invested in a particular view, right? Like Sitchin, for example.
Yeah.
Right. How dare you say Enki is the bad guy? I mean, it's like, what? Well, what? Because you read it in a little comic book. You're taking the word of somebody you don't even know. By the way, I did speak to Sitchin on the phone a few times, and we exchanged some letters, and I even met him in person one time. I showed him one of the artifacts that was given to me in Malibu, and he damn near fell out of his chair when I showed it to him. So it's not like I don't know. I've read all his books, so I know what I'm saying when I speak about this man. It's not a mystery to me what he wrote, but I also know why he did it. I mean, right. He was just a pawn of the archons, and I know he was rewarded. I mean, he did make quite a bit of money off of those books. and he, like I said, he was getting help not only from the Vatican, but I recently came across a documentary, was interviewing one of his close friends in Italy, who said that Zechariah told him that later in life, at least on one occasion, he had one of these entities show up in his room. It materialized in his room and spoke to him. Told him he needed to go to the hospital.
Wow.
He had heart problems. He didn't know it at the time, allegedly, right? So he went to the hospital and they did surgery on him almost immediately, and that saved his life temporarily, or prolonged his life a little bit. But I'm pretty sure the only reason they did that is because they needed him. You know, he was useful to them, to their agenda. And I have nothing against the man personally. Because I know he's just a pawn. He was being played.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough. I don't know enough about him, but I mean, all of this is really new to me. Like,
sure.
So I'm consuming as much information as I possibly can, right? And the only storyline that I have, right? The only storyline that I have that I firmly know is, what comes from the Bible, right? And that's just how I grew up, right? And so
most people, right?
And
okay.
So
wait, hang on. Yeah. So you're familiar with the story Noah?
Of course.
Okay. Well, it's taken from a much older tale called the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Sure, right. And I know that, right?
Okay, but did you know that Noah was one of Enki's children?
And then no, I didn't know that.
Right, because they don't want you to know that. When he was born, he glowed. His hair was completely white. His father, or the man that was going to be his father and raise him, was so freaked out by it, he fled.
Okay.
He knew that wasn't his child. I mean, everything about this baby was completely, I think he even said somewhere that it was the work of the gods or something like that. He knew it wasn't his child, and yet he ultimately had to raise this boy. Some accounts say that he even had some scales on his chest. Which is typical, and this is again why a lot of people have misunderstood and thought that Enki was a snake. It's because he's, from what I understand, he's an amphibinoid.
Amphibinoid.
Okay, and amphibians do have scales, but that doesn't mean they're reptilians. It's similar. It's a similar thing, but amphibians are aquatic.
Right.
But they also have they can have, like fish.
Right. So
most fish have scales, okay? That's why I'm trying to tell you. There's a misunderstanding. There's been a lot of misunderstandings about, these different entities and our relationship with them.
So that when you look back in time and you see those drawings of the what's his name? Starts with a D. The god that's it's a fish god, basically.
Oh, Dogon?
Yeah, Dogon, or the Persian drawings of the guys.
Of Oannes. Yes.
Right, so,
right, and he's got this is the mitre, this is the hat that the Pope wears.
Right.
It's a fish a fish head. I'm sorry.
So what's interesting about that is that the popular narrative, though, even along with in the Catholic Church, is that obviously Lucifer's the bad guy. So how's this going to play out? That's the question. Like, so how's this play out? Is it whenever you get to the point whenever we're because he is like Loki, very tricky. I mean, he's the trickster, right? And so just like he was with you, he told you he's the father and then laughed in your face. So how's this play out? And how many people are going to be? Because I know you've talked about this a little bit. Is that there's this thing called freedom out there, right?
Free will, yes.
Yes, free will, right? And which I consider freedom, right? And
okay,
right. I'm just, and so
yeah.
That there's a point in time that this is all going to come to a head. And you said just a minute ago, you were like, well, how people don't understand how we're worse off than what we were. But I don't necessarily believe that. I don't believe that we're worse off. What I do believe is that it's coming more to a point, and we're starting to see that line that's drawn in the sand, right? And we're starting to see it become more and more clear. It's just there's a lot of confusion, and the other side, the tricky side, is trying to pull all. They're pulling all their stunts. They're doing everything they can to keep you confused and to keep everybody confused. And I believe that when and this podcast is generally very focused on government, right, and very focused on how corrupt it is, right, and so we look at that aspect of it, but whenever we look at the spiritual aspect of it, or these religions, these faiths, and everything, they work very similar, very demagogic, very much a the politicians learn from the best, right? They learn from the churches and the all these demagogues, right? They've learned from the best. They figured it out, and as we see this point in time, that line is being drawn in the sand between the. It's evident. Look in the United States, right? Look around the world. You're seeing populist candidates rise up out of everywhere, and these people are. They're being blunt, they're being this, they're being that, and people are gravitating towards them. They don't realize that they're just being played. Those people, same people are being played. There's a puppet just the same. He works for this. So how, when this point in time, how does this play out? Because what, Christians are the largest population of the earth? Is that true?
No, I think that by population, that there's a tremendous number of Buddhists.
Okay, Buddhists then,
and Hindus, because India is huge. I mean, look, it's not a competition, but since you asked, there's a tremendous number of Buddhists and Hindus in Asia that they predominate. However, there's a lot of Catholics here in Hong Kong and throughout China.
Yeah.
There's also the Falun Gong is a fairly new religion, and they are very concerned about artificial intelligence. It's part of their doctrine. I know. I was surprised when I found that out. Okay, look, so how's it all going to play out?
Right.
The situation we have in Washington, D.C., I get into it very in-depth in my second book, Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C., in the conclusion. I state that the hidden history of our nation's capital has everything to do with demonic possession. Those, again, are the archons. When politicians or people go into Washington, D.C., their personality usually changes not for the better. And this is called Potomac fever. It's also called Beltway fever. This was noticed in President Trump in the first month in office. They said he had cabin fever. That was incorrect. And they noticed that he was acting differently, and he was complaining of headaches and agitation. But that's because he was being attacked by these entities that are, I mean, he calls it, and rightfully so. People call it the swamp.
Right.
And this is the problem. Certain areas the infestation is higher. Just like I told you about Africa and Ebola as a terrible example, but for conversation's sake, certain areas are more dangerous for the infection. So they don't always target everybody all the time. They don't need to. The people that are considered leaders, and this is true for religion as well, by the way. A lot of those people are targeted by these entities because they know that, like, let's say for the Pope, for example, right, or a cardinal, those guys affect a lot of people. So it's easier to just go in there and manipulate the so-called leaders of the world from the top down. But my understanding is Enki actually created all of that. Religion and politics, or kingship. It started off as kingship, and that was all based on who was more closely related to him by blood. Naturally, he takes care of his immediate family, and he actually created that whole hierarchical system. You know, the worker class. We're talking genetically now. He did that intentionally. A worker class, so-called middle class was pretty narrow, and then there was the elite. But they were all serving him. Well, I mean, still are. Okay, so he's the one that created let's just call it Atlantis. And this is why and the reason he did that was to create a contingent of special forces, space-faring super soldiers and psychics, etc., that would a military group that would attack his family on his behalf. This is why his family created the Great Flood and essentially wiped out Atlantis, which was a global empire. It's part of the Enki's empire, but it was a global government that he had created here. And they were doing all kinds of weird, disgusting genetic manipulation, and they had very high levels of technology. Mm-hmm. But again, mostly for warfare. So after it was wiped out, naturally he reconstituted it, and this is why Sir Francis Bacon wrote the book, The New Atlantis. He knew that Enki was going to rebuild Atlantis, and he has. This is what the whole so-called secret space program and super soldiers is all about. It didn't start in 1947. Mm-hmm. It started way before that, and so we are a legitimate target once again, thanks to him. He's turned this world into a target, and as far as how that all plays out, well, the divine ones would not. They don't want to wipe out this world again. So what I was shown is that there was going to be instead of a wave of water, there would be a wave of energy that would wash over the planet, and it would wake everybody up to what was really happening. In other words, everything that is hidden from us now would suddenly, like you said, the movie They Live. Uh-huh. Well, imagine if everybody had that experience where they suddenly could see the greater reality, the bigger picture. I mean, I think a lot of people would freak out completely. Some people probably die of a heart attack. Other people would just be like, oh my God, what am I doing here? How did I get into this mess? I don't want to be here. Let me out, you know? Again, this is one of the reasons they don't tell us the truth. It makes it easier to lie and manipulate us, but also because they know free will is a factor, and that most of us, given the choice, would say, get me out of here. I don't want to participate in this insanity. This is cruel. Uh-huh. You know, and pointless, by the way. It's absolutely pointless, at least to most of us. To Enki, this is all purposeful in the sense that when I told you, after he went mad, he and his crew found a way out of the Forbidden Zone. He went back to the court of Orion, where his family is, and they said, wow, we're glad you made it home, but God, you're crazy. You're sick. There's really something wrong with you, and we can't allow you to ascend to the kingship, because he was the firstborn. He's a prince. Uh-huh. Naturally, at some point, he would ascend to the throne of the king of the Orion Empire. Well, that would be completely irresponsible of his parents just to do that if he had gone mad, right?
Right.
So they. That pissed him off, obviously, and he said, well, fine, I'll just create my own empire. And that's where the war in heaven began. I mean, at first, I don't think it was immediate, but at some point, as he created his own empire, it became competitive with his family's. And so it's a family feud in that regard. And he doesn't fight fair. He lacks integrity. His empire is very unstable because he's unstable, and the people around him have no integrity. So there's this constant infighting. You see, so that's why I say it's unsustainable. And the thing is, we're not powerless in all this. Okay, I want people to understand through our consciousness, through our ability to make choices, free will, we can choose not to participate, not to support this insanity. First step is declaring yourself to be a sovereign soul. This is something they don't want us to do. Mm-hmm. That's the first step. And the second step is to say, I don't want to participate. I refuse to be. I declined citizenship in your empire. I am no longer a subject of your illegitimate evil empire. So that's just the first thing. I mean, I also tell people that when it comes to dealing with these entities, living in this the way we do, madhouse, is be calm, be kind, be creative, and the fourth component is be connected. That's probably the most important one. But being calm sounds simple, but it's not. When you're in a chaotic situation, right? Lately, all these protests and warfare, mayhem. That's the hardest thing to do is be calm in the midst of a crisis, and yet it's the most profound thing you can do. If you can achieve that, it not only works for you, but it's like infection. All what I'm telling you is infectious in a very positive way.
Okay.
So being calm in the midst of a crisis actually causes other people to become calm as well. Mm-hmm. They've done studies on this with meditation. Actually, can bring down the crime rate. Being kind, again, sounds simple, but when someone else is being cruel, it's very, very difficult. Very difficult. But it's something we can work on. Being creative is really important. Most people overlook it. They don't understand the divine nature within. We were created by a creator to be creative. That's part of who we and what we are. But when we ignore that aspect of ourselves, it will atrophy. And I think they actually prefer it. The Archons, the Luciferians, they prefer it when we are not creative. And I'm not talking about creating a better weapon system. I'm talking about being creative, using our consciousness to create. And that it grows incrementally up until the point where, as we progress, we ultimately become gods in the sense that we can actually manifest using our consciousness in the way I described before. It's not magic. Mm-hmm. It's not a trick. It's a process that's part of our, like I said, it's part of our divinity. And the other thing is being connected. What I was shown is that we are all, not only are we all family, but we are all of creation, and I mean a multitude of universes. It's all connected through what appears to me anyway to be a web of light. And we can reconnect with that at any point. First of all, we have to know it exists. Second of all, we have to want to connect to it. But this is what we use the term enlightenment for. When we connect to that, when a person has a high degree of connectivity to that web of light, that's called enlightenment.
That makes sense.
Well, I mean, look, there's a lot of illusions that we need to get rid of. Mm-hmm. We have to overcome, I should say. Like right now, it feels like we're not moving at all, right?
Yeah.
We're just sitting still, but that's not true. We're moving well over 2 million miles an hour. Or maybe it was 1.7. I forget the number. It's a ridiculous amount of – we're actually moving rapidly, which means that there's a tremendous amount of kinetic energy just in something that appears to be stationary.
Sure. I mean, that's physics, right? We've got tons of kinetic energy.
Okay, so now if you or I, anybody, is to connect to all of creation – when we're plugged in, it's sort of like a computer. One computer by itself is, even the best computer, it has some ability, but not the same as when you network it with millions of other computers. Right. Suddenly now you've got, and this is what I'm talking about. We are far more important than we've been led to believe. I mean, profound. What a soul is part of this just incredibly powerful, intelligent, loving creation. So connecting to that by whatever means, and there's a lot of ways to do it. But what I believe is going to happen is there's a magic number here. It's called a tipping point in science when you're looking at statistics. Once the tipping point is reached, then everything else is downhill from there. Okay, all the momentum is basically going that way. Right. Okay, so I feel we've actually reached the tipping point in 2012. Doesn't mean it's over yet, but I really think we have momentum now on our side, meaning those of us that want freedom, harmony, peace, the divine side of us is really emerging rapidly now and has the momentum. So the magic number, I don't know what it is. It's a percentage of humanity. Once they are connected well enough and are making a good choice to be part of creation again instead of all this synthetic nonsense, things are going to rapidly change. I mean, like it's going to come like in Christian terms, it's called a thief in the night.
Yeah, okay. I know the story.
Yeah, I know you're familiar with that term. But it really will. To a lot of people, it will catch them totally off guard. And it's one of the reasons I've been working hard through public speaking and writing articles and stuff, is just to show people, hopefully give them a better understanding of who we are and where we're headed, right? As opposed to what they want us to believe, which is actually, it's crazy. When you look at it, their idea of reality is utterly upside down and backwards and unsustainable. And, there's really only two ways to look at things, right? Is resonance. Everything is in harmony. All the waves are working together. Okay. Or it's dissonance. That's where everything is just being destructive and collapsing. And this entire episode that we've gone through here in Enki's empire has been very dissonant the entire time. It just lacks integrity or harmony, or both, actually.
That makes sense. So the idea of, it kind of goes back to everything that you've been saying as far as like everything's distorted. Right, we're trying to harmonize in a distorted environment is very difficult, right?
Yeah,
it
that's
is,
why
right?
If I played in an orchestra when I was younger, the first thing that everybody does is tunes to the same frequency.
This is good. This is where we're going. Exactly where I was going to take this. Exactly.
Yeah,
tune to the same frequency, right. and that is, I think that's in my opinion, when you're tuned to the same frequency, that's when freedom will happen. I don't know how we get there. I think it's more of this stuff, more of presenting these ideas, more of opening people's minds up to new thought instead of blindly following something without. I think what you have to do is you have to. I'm not going to take your word for this, Robert. You know what I mean?
Please don't.
And that's the thing. And that's the thing is that I'm going to continue to think, and I'm going to continue, because this is what I do. This is how I do it. I continue to think about all of these things, and I start to try to glue things together logically, right? And it's taken me years and years and years and years of thinking just to get to where I feel like, ooh, okay, this is starting to make a little more sense to me. Things are starting to make a little more sense to me, but I'm nowhere near confident in what 100% confident. But I like the idea of being calm. I like this. I like the idea of being kind, being creative, being connected. These are things that no matter what you believe in, no matter who you are, if you can do those four things, it's going to help you. That's the key. Regardless of helping other people, it's going to help you. Do you understand? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because if you can do that, maybe somebody else can do that, and eventually it becomes, just like you said, as far as evil is contagious, this can be contagious as well.
It's infectious in a positive way, okay? And it's called exponential. Once a person actually starts embodying those things, even if you start small and you're weak, you keep doing it, you get stronger. And the stronger you are, it does affect others around you in a positive way, and they start to feel it too. I mean, Sheldrake's work is interesting. I don't know, I agree with it, but he called it the 100th monkey theory. So it's basically what it is brainwave entrainment. This is what Enki does to us in a very negative way, mind control. And I'm not saying we're actually controlling anybody else. We're influencing them subtly with our behavior and our emotions. So it's like, okay, look, we emulate each other, right or wrong. We do. We just do that. And because, like I said, we're all connected, whether we like it or not. We really, really are. And I'm not trying to trick anybody. I'm just saying that this is what you were touching on. It is like, if you can be calm, kind, creative, and connected, that has nothing to do with religion or politics. Those things were designed to actually divide us up, and so that we could be continually conquered or controlled by the Luciferians covertly.
Very good. And I agree with you, and I agree that that what we're moving into, or what we have moved into in the last century or so, is that we've moved away from the church being able to control. More so now the state has become everybody's God.
Yes, and then it'll be science. Science is going to solve everything with their technology, especially artificial intelligence.
I was just going to say that. Very good.
No, thank you. Artificial intelligence almost took me out of this equation here. They used it as literally jammed it into my psyche. It's called psychic warfare. They'd used an artificial intelligence in early 1990. It's all in. Look, I would suggest people go to my website in the article section and click on Technocide.
Yeah, that's the article.
Okay, well, I recently updated. I'm constantly updating it. All right, but what is now page 2 is just the headlines of what is happening all around us. Modern day, they're telling us artificial intelligence, robotics, androids, is sex robots. That's all part of our future. Smart cities. It's not speculation anymore. It's in the news, and I collected at least 500 headlines. I don't expect everybody to read all the articles. Just scan the headlines. It'll scare the crap out of you. Right. What they are doing actually.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. You know what? You fit right in on this podcast. If the other host was here, he's very much always talking. He's always referring to Skynet and how we're on. It's basically he's always talking about how AI, and he would love this conversation. Maybe in the future we can have you back on and talk solely about AI and how it is what's going to solve all of the world's problems. Fake. It's
going to create. It's going. No, here's the thing. It's not new. They want us to believe this is some modern miracle of science, right? That mankind is responsible for this, and it's not at all. It was brought here. It was given to us. Like I said, they're reconstituting Atlantis, and it's a very bad thing because these machines, the way they're just constructed, are psychopathic from day one.
Right. They don't have it. They can't be empathetic. They can't be.
No, I mean, if they could work real hard to make them empathetic, and some people claim that they have this emotional thing component that they can program in. I doubt it very much. It doesn't serve the agenda, especially not military AI.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, God, I just saw it the other day. Russia has put up a thing. It's a Terminator robot. It shoots with both hands, and it's perfect. Its aim is flawless, right? As long as the system is operational and not being hacked into, it's going to kill a lot of people. And it won't think twice. It's not even designed to think. There's no such thing as remorse.
Right. And it's become autonomous. They will. It's scary. Very scary.
Yeah,
Robert, it's been very good talking to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for what you're doing. Look, I know a lot of people. There's so many channels out there, and a lot of people just are, scanning around. But this isn't really just entertainment. What we're doing here has an impact on the collective consciousness. It really is important to understand that this healing process that we're going through starts on an individual basis, and then that affects the collective. So people, it really does empower people when they're hearing the truth or something that is accurately given to them, authentic, I should say. Authentic, accurate information and insights is very, very important, and it does make a huge difference. Okay, so thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. I do appreciate it, and I'd like to. I guess I'd like to get you to plug your website one more time so that we can get.
Yeah, it's really simple. It's spelled UNICUS magazine.com. Pretty much everything is free there. Mm-hmm. And if anybody wants to contact me, you can do so through my email address. There's links at the bottom of pretty much every page, and I do answer all my emails. Yes, so I know it's a little bit nuts, but I think it's important for me to engage people that take the time to actually write to me. I feel it's the least I can do is to write back to them and engage them and maybe clarify a few issues. And because I know we've raised so many different things, it tends to cause people to have more questions.
Sure, but that's good. Yeah. That's good that more people ask questions, the more information gets out there, the more. That's all part of the process. And so I do appreciate you. I would love to have you back on as a guest in the future.
Okay.
Please consider that. And
all right.
Enjoy the rest of your day in Hong Kong.
Thanks. Thank you.
And I look forward to reading more on UNICUSmagazine.com. So thank you.
Great.
And have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. Well, folks, that was Robert Stanley from UNICUS Magazine. He has a totally different take than the other guest, Matt LaCroix from. We had him on the Spearhead transmission earlier, and I just it's so many different ideas out there, so many different things, and I think that the best thing for everybody to do is to keep thinking. Keep asking those questions, whatever that is inside your head, whatever it is that you talk to on a daily basis. I know you do, because I do the same thing. But whatever it is that whenever you have something deep that you want to think about, or something that you're questioning, you reach into that part of your in part of your soul or brain or mind or whatever you want to call that, and you ask. And I think that's kind of the key to keep doing that. And don't let people shake you out of it, but always question, always think about what they're saying. Listen to what they're saying, but don't be intimidated by somebody whenever they put you in a position that they're going to gaslight you or whatever they do, right? Walk through things logically. Think about it. That's one of the great things about being your own person. So I'd like to thank Robert Stanley again, and it was an excellent show. I don't know if the audio was great, but if the audio wasn't that great on YouTube, or if it's poor, please check us out on iTunes. It's Spearhead Transmission. You can find us at iTunes, Libsyn, TuneIn Radio. You can go to spearheadtransmissionpodcast.com. Find us on Facebook, and like our page, share it, and have a great night. Thanks. Oh, subscribe down below. Yeah, and click the bell. It'll do you good. Adios, muchachos.
Accessing your mind. Programming started. Thank you for listening to the Spearhead transmission. We know you enjoyed your experience. Please come again and partake in our ridiculousness. There is so much more to explore. Remember, your mind is yours. You are not part of a collective. You will start to think independently if you seek the truth. Stop buying the lies. Water that tree of liberty, and you will break those chains of mental slavery. slavery. You are beautiful and heroic. Until next time, goodbye. We love you.